Welcome to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast, a place where backcountry warriors can share their stories of grit, service, healing, and wilderness adventures. I'm your host, Tom Walton, Marine Corps veteran, full-time cop, and aspiring hunting and fishing guide. Join me and others as we journey from the hood to the woods in pursuit of freedom in the outdoors. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Tom Walton, and we have reached the milestone of our 21st episode. The cool thing about this is this will be the last episode of 2025. The next time you hear from us here at Pursuing Freedom Outdoors, it'll be in the new year, 2026, and looking forward to all the things we're going to do there. I am joined tonight by Joe Kondelis. He is the president and founder of the American Bear Foundation. Those that know me and are getting to know me will know and will learn that I'm a pretty excited bear hunter. I like hunting bears quite a bit, especially in the springtime here in Idaho where we can do that. So I am really excited to get to learn about the Bear Foundation and probably get some education about bear conservation because they're a pretty awesome species. And there are a lot of things going on around the country involving black bears down in the whole lower 48, and then, we can get into grizzly bear stuff. Obviously, in my neck of the woods is a big issue, and up in Alaska, and so just excited to dive in with Joe, and it's probably enough of me yapping, so Joe, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, buddy. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of come tell our story and talk about bears. It's my favorite thing to do.
Awesome, man. Well, let's do that. So before we get too far into the organization, why don't you just kind of give our listeners a little bit of your background, as much as you want to share, about where you're from, how you got into hunting, maybe why are you such an avid bear hunter?
Yeah, kind of very similar to a lot of people that grew up in the West. I grew up in Butte, Montana, which is in southwest Montana, and surrounded by all the hunting and fishing opportunities I could want. And, I come from a hunting family background. My dad hunted and my grandpa hunted. And, so I was brought up doing that. Feel very fortunate, especially now. I know a lot of guys that are kind of late onset hunters, and they always remind me how lucky I am to not have to buy all your gear at once and be able to have the experiences I did. So yeah, I grew up in southwest Montana, just loved living there. Went to high school in Butte there, and then I ended up graduating from Montana Tech to college there in business. So, oddly enough, I don't have a biology or conservation degree. And it's kind of a funny way how we got into the Bear Foundation. But yeah, I lived there until I was 25. Moved down to Cody, Wyoming, which is right on the east boundary of Yellowstone National Park, in 2005 with my wife and for work. And we love it here. We've lived here since then. We have a daughter, senior in high school. And I thought Montana was a paradise for outdoorsmen. And then I moved to Wyoming, and it's like a whole nother level. There's just as much free space and open space, but less people. So it's been a blessing living here. Still close enough to home where I can get back. It's only 4 hours away, but I get to live in a pretty remarkable place here. And, for a long time, my background was I was a beer guy. I worked in the beer business for about 25 years almost, and then recently pivoted and then doing a couple business ventures on my own, and then have a lot of time spent doing the American Bear Foundation thing. So that keeps me extra busy.
Awesome, man. That's cool. I'm actually one of those late onset hunters that you were talking about. I am. Yeah. I started hunting. Gosh, man, it's been almost a decade now, getting closer to a decade. It's probably about 7 years or so. So yeah, my background, most listeners will probably know this already, but I grew up, don't judge me, but I grew up down on the central coast of California in a small town. Thankfully, my parents were smart enough to know that they wanted to raise me out in the woods. So we bought a few acres out in town, or they did. And I got to spend a lot of my later teen years, especially out in the woods and doing things. And we camped and fished, but didn't really hunt. Did a lot of fishing and free diving off kayaks out on the ocean and stuff. Got to taste the Pacific Northwest when I was in the Marines, and when my wife and I we were living back down in California because I got out of the Marines down there and working, and we just were like, we need to get back to the Northwest. We knew we didn't want to live in Washington, so we picked Idaho, and that was almost
Good
10 years
pick.
ago now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
So
great place, and it probably made it tough for you to be able to hunt being in the service, I imagine. To, like, be able to kinda commit to
yeah,
doing that when we're done.
yeah, and not and when I was in the service, most of my I did some fishing when I was in the service. When I could, I got pretty into it when I was out stationed in Washington. I
Mm,
had some friends that fished, and we went on some camping trips and did some outdoor stuff. I started really, and I always loved wildlife. Growing up, I always tell people, I'm like, if I didn't get into law enforcement in a second life, I probably would have been a wildlife biologist or something.
yeah,
And hunting just fits so well because we get to learn animals so intimately. And then the encounters we have with bears. I've gotten to sit 10 yards away and watch bear cubs playing underneath my feet when I'm sitting in a tree stand, right? How many people get to experience that? So,
many, man,
but
it's a
and yeah, and as far as the military thing, man, that's where the Armed Forces Initiative that we were telling you about comes in. Did an episode a couple of episodes ago. Folks should go back and listen if they haven't. All about how AFI connects military members into their local hunting community where they're stationed, and it's a pretty good mission, man.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So I'm one of those guys. Since we're talking about bears,
It's
and the cool
always
things
interesting to me that, we definitely I for one, and not to get on a tangent, but I take it for granted a little bit because it's just always been in my kind of DNA since a little kid, like watching my dad go on hunting trips and wanting to go and then being able to go and then I meet people that are like, oh, they're wanting to get into it. And the excitement like they have now is so cool to see how excited and like passionate they are about it. And I was like, God, we were all that way. And not to say I'm not anymore, but it's different. I've been hunting my whole life. You know, so it's just neat to see. I like being around people. I go hunting with a lot of guys that are late onset hunters, and I think they make me a better hunter. They make me not get complacent, and I definitely have a lot of fun with them.
that's cool, man. Yeah, and it is. It's a challenge, right? Because you have this learning curve. You don't have a dad to show you, so it's like,
Mhm.
we do a whole podcast on just trying to start hunting as an adult, and because people don't, especially with like elk, who
Oh
nobody
yeah,
wants to take somebody to their elk spot, right? So a lot of learning you're doing on your own unless you get lucky, which thankfully I have. I've had a few good mentors that have helped me out along the way, and I've had some success, man. And my first success is funny because we're talking about bears. The first big game animal I killed was a nice big cinnamon black bear. It was a
nice.
sow. She was 18 years old, and I took her
Oh
with my
wow,
bow. Thanks to the help of a buddy. In fact, the arrow's on the wall over there above
that
his
is
cowboy
cool.
hats. But so, I started, you know, I got lucky to get a bear pretty early, and it's my first, like I said, my first big game animal. So I have a real special spot for bears, man. I love the heck out of not just hunting them, but getting to watch them. And every time you see a bear out in the wilderness, it's a pretty special experience. And
It
yeah,
gets
but
in your blood pretty quickly.
it does, man. But
Those
being
bears.
a newer, like newish hunter definitely takes some doing and tenacity, but it's absolutely accomplishable, man. I think there's some hunting in a guy's DNA, in men and women sometimes too. Like, not to put them out, but like, just there's just something ingrained in us that we are predators. And once you get out there and
Oh yeah.
start figuring it out, you kind of start getting it, and things start clicking. And the last thing on that note too is just like I said, part of the podcast is trying to inspire others, man. I went from a California guy that was ditching high school to take my girlfriend to the beach to a guy that's living in Idaho, and I've guided bear hunts, I've guided deer hunts, I've guided fishing trips. So anything is possible, man, if you really want to do it.
No, that's a neat trajectory. Like it's cool to hear those stories. I love it.
But yeah, man. Well, anyways, a long tangent about me. We're here to talk about you and the Bear Foundations. Um, Obviously, we know you had a background in hunting. But when, and why, or what sparked this a love for bears for you, and how did that transition into starting the Bear Foundation?
Yeah, it's a unique story in just kind of how we got to where we're at with the Bear Foundation. I didn't grow up, and like I'd mentioned, I grew up hunting, but in where I grew up, it was, you weren't anything unless you got your elk every year. And we deer hunted a little bit, but it was nothing like it is down here in Wyoming with deer. But elk were everything. And so I mostly grew up elk hunting. My dad would go on bear hunts. I never got to go on them. They were definitely dude trips when I was younger, and it just wasn't a part of our kind of something we did. As I got into high school, I really wanted to kind of bear hunt. I think I took my passion for hunting kind of maybe to another level than maybe my dad was in at the time. I think it happens where you want to get into more things hunting and doing backpack hunting and some of these things that I didn't grow up doing. And bear hunting was one of them. And so a high school buddy of mine, still one of my best friends, we just kind of were like, well, let's learn how to bear hunt. I don't know how to do it. And so we started bear hunting in high school and really didn't have a clue. And Southwest Montana's got some good bears, and not the numbers you'll see for bears in Idaho or Washington by any stretch. Even in terms of Montana, Southwest Montana is not one of the highest, not like the northwest corner. But so we would just go out to our elk spots and try and like figure out how to bear hunt. And boy, we were clueless, dude. I tell you, we spent a couple of years just wandering around the hills, and that was kind of before the internet was super huge, and you really didn't have a lot of resources. So we didn't know who to talk to or anything. And I remember that always as part of the reason why we, fast forward to a few years later, why we started this. And then as we kind of started figuring things out, you mentioned people don't like sharing their elk spots. Bear spots are worse. I mean, no one wants to share bear information with you because you don't go see a ton of bears. You might see one a day or maybe one a week. It's not like a herd of elk. So we started kind of figuring it out. And I would say by the time we were seniors and into our freshman year of college, we were starting to get into some bears. And I really was just like, man, I think like it was so challenging first. And it really like grabbed a hold of me. Before I even killed one, I was like obsessed with learning more about bear hunting and understanding bears. And from that day on, it got me. And then I killed my first bear not long after that. And I mean, it's been from that day that I've been just completely lost with these bears. I think what drives me more than anything is just understanding them more. Like there's books, there's information out there, but just kind of how bears live on the landscape has always fascinated me. And that really pushed us into this foundation. I'd moved to Cody, Wyoming in 2005. And when I got here, naively thought, I'm just going to start kind of trying to figure out bear hunting here. Went out a lot of times without a tag because you have to wait a year in Wyoming, and was just, man, grizzly bears all over the place. And I'm like, what is going on? All these great looking spots where I would normally probably see a black bear, just grizzly bears. And I was not seeing black bears, and I was just like, not confused, but I was like, man, is that the reality of what it is here compared to where I grew up? And talked to a lot of people, and they're like, oh yeah, we're covered in grizz. I don't see a lot of black bears. And I was like, oh geez, this is a bad place to live if I love bear hunting so much. I kind of started trying to find answers, talking to biologists, talking to wardens, talking to people that grew up here. And that was kind of the final straw where I was just like, I feel like black bears need some sort of representation. And so do bear hunters, and didn't have a clue what I was doing. Talked to my same buddy, was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. He's like, oh, that'd be a cool idea. And he knows me. I'm going to do it if I say I'm going to. And just started trying to figure out how to run a nonprofit, start a nonprofit and do that. And that was in 2000. And that's kind of when we started, and haven't really looked back since. But, that was kind of how we got to where we're at today. Just a love and an affinity for bears. And then moving here, really, I think if I hadn't moved here, I don't think I would have done it, just because we had such a great resource for bears where I lived that it wasn't something that would have been like turning in my head, like, what is going on here? There's no black bears. And there are, but it just seems like, we have way high grizz densities and low black bear densities. And so that probably was what really pushed it over the edge and made us start this thing up.
That's pretty interesting to hear. We were kind of talking before the podcast a little bit, but about this, kind of dive into it if we want to, but just the whole grizzly bear thing. And, people in other parts of the countries, even other hunters in other parts of the countries are going to, think like, oh man, grizzlies are endangered. How many grizzlies can there be? I was just listening to a podcast today, and they were talking about a fella that they encountered up on the north slope of the Brooks Range. And how naive people can be, for lack of better terms. You're not trying to insult anybody's intelligence, but to bears, bear range, whether it's grizzly or black bear. But this guy gets encountered up on the north slope of the Brooks Range. He's riding a bicycle, like his goal is to ride from Vancouver to Prudhoe Bay and back. And he's camping in a spot right next to where a grizzly bear had been living, and he had no clue. I mean, he was yards away from this mess of old bones and new bones and things this bear had just been having. It was his dining room. And the hunters on the podcast told the guy, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't really think I had to worry about bears up here. I thought that once I got out of like the Yukon and northern BC, that grizzlies weren't here." I mean, who would ever think to go to, let alone, dude, you're starting to push the boundaries of polar bear country. But just people don't know, man. But same thing where I live, we have very high black bear numbers, even in our grizzly range up here. But grizzly bears, we have a lot of them in North Idaho, and they cause a lot of problems for big game herds up here. They also starting to cause a lot of problems for farmers and stuff like that. I had a buddy who had a quarter horse taken out of his pasture by a grizz.
Yeah. It's probably a whole nother podcast or 5. I could go down the grizzly bear kind of entire from the day of delisting on to now and a bunch of soapboxes, but it's a major issue in Wyoming and Montana, predominantly around Yellowstone and then up by the Northern Continental Divide ecosystem and Glacier. The buckets are full and the bears are moving out, and the states are not allowed to manage them. The feds run the show there. And just for perspective, I spring bear hunt a ton. And in 20 days in May, I saw 35 grizz and 8 black bears. That's kind of typical ratio for us is in the country where we hunt spot and stock is, 7 or 8 to 10 to 1 that you'll see grizz for black bear, and so when I was seeing that before we started the foundation, I was like, how is this affecting our black bears? Like everywhere you go, you see grizz. They've got the landscape kind of locked up, and big black bears are going to be, tougher to move off a food source. But, what's really, I think, susceptible to that larger predator, that grizzly bear, is going to be our young sows, our young boars and cubs. And so it's still not understood. It's a big thing that we're working on and trying to get done. The problem is when we come to doing research, we don't have a baseline of what the black bear numbers and habitat and range was like pre-grizzly bear. We weren't studying black bears in the 70s, so we don't know. And now we would just be kind of picking it up almost way late. But I think what we're going to try and work on is just getting some, maybe initially, trying to understand movement patterns based off of the grizzly bears, because almost every freaking grizzly bear is collared. So we know everything they're doing, but we don't have black bears. So it'd be nice to see how they use the landscape, like an overlay, and see, what it's doing for them. So, that was a big part of what, the Bear Foundation wanted to do early on, because our motto is for bears and bear hunters, not just a hunter advocacy group. We're a wildlife advocacy group that advocates to have bears on the landscape. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can so we have a future hunting opportunities for bears and they're thriving and surviving and doing well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's said right on your website that you guys, under your values, is that you believe in the North American conservation method, right? So
North American model, yeah.
Yep. So
site-based conservation.
And I mean, obviously, we know that with grizzly management, you and I know and understand, and most hunters are going to understand, and anybody that I feel like just really wants to pay attention to the truth behind it, we understand and we know that a lot of grizzly bear management and the delisting issues, and just the slightest of backgrounds, because we, like you said, we could do this for hours. Some of the issues with the grizzlies is that in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, they were delisted. There was management briefly turned over to the states, so there was going to be agreed upon allocated tags between Wyoming, Idaho, Montana. I think, was it Wyoming or Montana abstained, said we're not going to have a hunt. And Montana. Idaho said, okay, so I thought it was Montana. Montana abstained from the hunt. Idaho was going to issue like one tag.
Mm-hmm.
As kind of per the usual this day and age, a judge said, no, we're not going to do that because somebody had sued. And they got put back on the endangered species list, despite the fact that grizzlies in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem have far exceeded their recovery objective numbers. And which kind of leads to that.
They not only have met the numbers, but there's certain metrics that to be classified as recovered, they had to meet like all these different metrics. And this is a few years ago, they had met every metric for like 10 years. So, we're not only hitting objectives for population, but reproductive and all that, those different metrics that were in place.
Yeah, recruitment for cubs and stuff like that has been high. I'd be interested as far as the impact on black bear population and numbers, because where they cohabitat, obviously up here in the Idaho Panhandle, I can't say for sure. My observations when I'm up there, I see a ton of black bears and I see grizzlies. I see them. They're there. I see their sign, but I still see good black bear numbers. But I wonder, maybe in your area, is there any, you can't go back in time to see what the numbers were, and you're gathering data. Is there any data that's been gathered on predation of black bears by grizzly bears yet?
It's anecdotal. There's been people that have witnessed it, people that have found carcasses and stuff, but there's never been like there's never been a study as far as I know. It's interesting you say that, because like if no one's been to the Panhandle of Idaho and at the same time never been to Northwest Wyoming, two extremely different habitats. And I think, I fear less for black bears in the Panhandle than I do in Northwest Wyoming, because the habitat in Northwest and Northern Idaho is way better black bear habitat, like heavy forested areas, lots of undergrowth, rain. It lends itself to black bears more than grizzly bears. Now, where I live is like the atypical grizzly bear habitat, kind of wide open, big mountains. But we get these things that are living up above tree line in the summertime. And then we have these big, high mountain prairies. And it is ideal grizzly habitat, because they're a digger by nature, a rooter, and they don't need the timber in the cover. And we have very little timber compared to the Panhandle, so I think habitat plays into as much as anything. The more I've learned our black bear numbers in Wyoming, at least where I live, to the numbers is habitat. Now, if you go over by Jackson, where we have grizzly bears and black bears, there's better bear habitat for black bears. And so I think they can coexist a little better. But here, food is limited, and I just think they're all kind of like in this tight space trying to utilize the landscape that is not great black bear habitat. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. It'll probably never be really fully understood here. And where you live, there's so much cover, it's hard to observe bears because it's so thick. There might be a lot more grizzly bears there than you think, because you just can't see them.
Oh, yeah. They're definitely there. One time I was actually going to be guiding a bear hunt, and it was like prime bear rut. And I was going to meet the clients. I was at the outfitter's place the next morning, but I just decided to camp, by myself, because his place was full. I didn't really have a spot to land. And so to save myself the drive, I just camped up in the area by a lake. And as I was fishing, just burning in the evening, and I could hear a sow grizzly making all kinds of crazy noises, about 400 yards from where I was going to be sleeping that night. And it made sleeping interesting, because, she kept kind of groaning through the night and doing, and just rut activity, from what I understand, talking to biologists about the experience. But when I had met a biologist, and when I told him where I was at, he's like, "Oh yeah, we got cameras on the backside of the lake." He's like, "Man, I wouldn't go hiking there by myself for anything." He's like, "There are so many grizzlies in there." We do, yeah. What's interesting about our area is the grizzlies historically have been kind of stayed up in the mountains, stayed up in the timber, especially when their numbers were lower. But as their population starts increasing, there's been a lot more human bear conflict on the what we call the Kootenai River Bench, which is a lot more agricultural, a little bit flatter rolling hills. It's a valley. It's surrounded by big mountains on both sides. But that bear conflict, like I said, that's where that outfitter is actually he had a quarter horse taken out of his field by a grizzly bear and killed.
Yeah.
It's their thing.
It's not going to ever, I don't know. We can do a lot. We do a lot for conflict mitigation here and across the West. And it's a forever growing issue. And part of it is, the grizzly expansion into new areas, and no different than wolves do. They have their dominant areas, and a young boar is going to spread out and go, and he ends up being in a place he shouldn't, trying to access easy food, and so that causes issues. Our black bears, it's an interesting thing with black bears. We've had black bears on this continent for a long time, well before we got here, and they've never been a resource concern. And through all the proliferation of the West and us spreading all over the place and building towns and cities and roads and highways, black bears have figured it out. Like, they're such adaptable creatures that even now, with all the hunting that we do, which is a remarkable success story because we can still hunt these things and have increasing bear populations almost everywhere. So our black bears are doing so well, but they understand it a little bit better than grizzly bears do, I think. Like, it's just in their nature to be a little less troublesome than grizzly bears. The grizzly bear scientific name is Ursus horribilis for a reason. They're just ornery sons of guns, and they get into trouble a lot. And so now, when you get them into new areas, and people aren't used to it. And so it's just going to be a continuing issue. The more we are trying to expand, and bears are going to do their thing, and they're going to grow and spread out and find new territory and new habitat. And it's just always going to be an issue.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And if all this that we're saying, especially that I'm saying, that might sound negative towards grizzly bears, I do want to make it abundantly clear to listeners that my personal stance on grizzlies, and I actually hold this for wolves too, is I love grizzly bears. I think they're amazing, powerful, incredible animals. I want them to be on the landscape. My only request would be that we can manage them like we manage black bears, where it's appropriate. Just like you guys talk about on your website, right? Hey, you want to allow for hunting where numbers sustain ethical harvests. So
yeah, I want a sustainable grizzly bear population. I don't want them relisted if we ever get them off, but I want state management. And I think that's a great hunting opportunity. And one thing that I say all the time is, if you want to make sure that a species is never threatened or endangered, create a hunter advocate for that species. Because you look at all the species we have where we have hunter advocates, deer, elk, sheep, moose, pronghorn, whatever, they're thriving. And moose in certain areas, but for the most part, those species all have a hunter advocate, and grizzly bears don't have that yet. And I think if we created some sustainable, well-regulated hunting seasons for them, and in some areas a little more liberal hunting season, you're going to start getting people that are like, I'm a grizzly bear hunter. I want to make sure that there's grizzly bears out there so I can hunt them one day and my kid can. I mean, I think that's the missing link in this whole conversation that no one wants to hear. Not no one. The anti-hunters don't want to hear it because they're just so against it. I go back to where we're at with black bears. We're hunting them across the United States in new areas, Florida, Louisiana. Those are brand new states hunting black bears now. And Florida has been kind of on and off. Louisiana, I mean, they're killing giant bears down there. I never thought we'd see a hunting season in those areas. And so I think it's like it lends itself. The hunters are making these things, making sure that we have species on the landscape for the future.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes to even like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's tagline, right? Hunting is conservation, and it's so true. I mean, you could go and list all the reasons on why hunting is conservation, but like I said in the beginning of the podcast, a lot of hunting to me is the love of the wildlife. I mean, I wholeheartedly love elk and deer, mule deer, white-tailed deer. I love wild turkeys. These animals that I go out and actively pursue, it's like you have a relationship with them, right? You have, besides the fact that they put food on your table, just that interaction and getting to know them. I mean, how many people that don't hunt elk, besides a few lucky folks, are ever going to have a giant bugling bull come in, bugling their faces off 8 yards away from you? I mean, you can feel it in your chest. You can smell the elk peeing on itself. I mean, that is an experience with that animal that, unless you go out and hunt elk, especially archery hunt in that situation, right? When are you going to get the chance to experience that close encounter with a big pissed off bull elk? And it is pretty epic. And that's just one of many things. I just enjoy watching a white-tailed deer do what they do, especially when they don't know I'm there. I love going and spending time glassing over mule deer, even if it's just a bunch of does, just watching their patterns and what they're doing through their day and learning about that animal. I mean, it's you're spending a
Hmm.
lot of time in incredible country on top of it observing these
Yeah,
animals. And so hunters tend to be passionately protective of the species they pursue, which is what
it's so
people
true.
can't wrap their minds around.
They can't. You've probably heard it, and I get it all the time. You love bears so much, why do you hunt them? And it's a hard thing to explain to someone that doesn't hunt. And I think sometimes as hunters, we try and justify things in the wrong ways. Like, especially predator hunters, they might have a little bit. Well, I do it so I can protect fawns and calves. It's like, well, that's part of it, probably, maybe. Like, I never go bear hunting thinking I'm going to save an elk calf this year. I do it for different reasons. But, my love for bear hunting and my love for bears, they kind of are hand in hand. Like, I wouldn't love bears so much if I didn't get a chance to hunt them, because I wouldn't have been exposed to that species in that way. And then once I started observing it, I became so obsessed with learning more about it. And for me now, I bear hunted so long that, like, I don't really hunt bears anymore to kill bears. I'm obsessed with the challenge of finding them, especially in some of this grizz country. I just love seeing them and watching them and being around them. Like, they are so fascinating to me. I think they're one of the most underrated species we have. People just don't give them enough credit. They're brilliant creatures. And just the more you get to observe them and be around them, really, it's hard not to fall in love with them and want to be around them more and do it more. And so, yeah, that's kind of my why anymore. Initially, it was because I wanted to kill a bear. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to kill a bear. I wanted to have one. And then as I started progressing, I'm like, oh, this is my thing, I think. Like, I used to think elk was my thing. And then I started bear hunting. I'm like, oh, them damn things are too heavy. I'd rather bear hunt. So it's funny how things change. But I have found that people that I take bear hunting and get new people out there, almost all of them are like, especially if you get one, you're kind of like, oh, I never would have expected that kind of experience, or I want to bear hunt more. I want to learn more about bears, and that's always really neat to me.
It is. And when it comes to bears, I think particularly bears and lions, I feel the same way about mountain lions. And I do feel this towards any animal. And my wife just really experienced this because her and I did a cow elk hunt last month and were successful. And there's just something really special and inexplainable because you feel sad. Like, I mean, when I kill a bear, I feel pretty bad. I mean, because they have so much
Yep.
personality. I feel bad every time I kill an animal, but they have personality and you just feel the loss of their presence on the landscape. At least I do.
Hmm. I struggle with that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's important because we're humans. We have human emotions, and we respect these animals, and we do love them. But we like to manage them. We like to have food on our table. We like to experience being around them. But one thing that's really cool about hunting that you can't replace, unless you're like trapping and collaring animals and stuff and tranquilizing them, that's then you get the same thing, but is that part where you get to walk up and put your hands on that animal, right? You
Yeah.
get to have a moment where you get to, it sounds silly, but pet a bear, right? You can look at its claws and look at its teeth and look at its eyes and get this close exam. And I mean, my wife with that cow elk was doing that. She's just like, wow, these teeth, wow, I can't believe how soft or thick this hair on the neck is. And I mean, that ability to put your hands on a wild animal, to me, that is just a really, really cool experience. Like duck hunting, man, you don't appreciate the fluorescence in a duck's feathers until you're holding it in your hands and moving it around in the light. And you're like, holy crap. I mean, this duck was pretty, but now that it's in my hands. So that to me has always been a big part of the experience.
I think that's why, hundreds of years ago, the Native Americans regarded wildlife so highly, because not only was it survival, but, they were able to be intimate with the whole thing, like you're saying. And we've grown to a society where we just go to the grocery store and get what we need. So it's less personal. Like, it takes away all the bad stuff that has to happen for that to get there. The killing and the processing and all that, and even understanding, like, where it comes from. And I think that's what hunters have a greater respect for wild places and wild things than any people on the planet, because we get to experience that, even just to a small degree. Even if you don't hunt that much, there's something that brings you back to it all the time. And I think it is that, like, it's primal for us. We're supposed to be hunters.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you're not a hunter, just simply driving by a herd of elk or a deer and you see that big buck or that big bull, a non-hunter is going to go, wow, look at that big, bull. Look at that. I mean, some about antlers attracts people's attention, right? I mean, we just
Oh, for
are,
sure.
we're fascinated by antlers. We're fascinated by wildlife. And so I think if people open their minds to it, they'd understand just a little bit better. And we keep talking about, for me, I keep bringing up food on the table. It's kind of one thing I always like to bring up when I talk about bear hunting, when I think that maybe a non-bear hunter would be listening to, because even other hunters from different states or even within like Idaho, I've met people that hunt
Oh,
deer
yeah.
and elk and never have hunted bears. And it's amplified when I talked about this with lions, but what do you do? Are you just keeping the hide? I'm a meat hunter. I think that's a big part of it. One of the reasons I got into hunting, but I eat every single piece of meat I pull off of a bear. And not only
Yep.
do I eat it, but my wife eats it and we both absolutely love it. It's actually one of our top favorite game meats.
It's one of the best
black bear meat.
game animals there is. There's a couple things at play here that have created this narrative that bears are not good to eat, right? So I think, in the West, it's predominant. You see it and hear about it all the time. If you go out East, bear is highly regarded, highly regarded as table fare. We don't see it out here. And part of it, I think, for us is we've got a state like Idaho and Wyoming where you don't legally have to take the meat out of the field. So our own states are telling us like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, just leave it. And so what does that tell new hunters? Like, oh, that must be bad for you if they don't even make you take it out of the field. And that's a major issue. Language and words are a big problem right now with bears and cats because in many states are considered trophy game. And so that causes a big problem with the anti-hunters because when they think of trophy, they think of hides and horns. They don't think of meat. And so I think we have some major issues that we're up against. And even I know a lot of bear hunters that I try and talk to, in Wyoming, and I know that still to this day will not eat bear. And it makes me crazy because it's bad optics for bear hunters and for lion hunters to be doing that. It just causes, a bunch of fuel. And
Yeah.
most people that eat bear would not believe it once they do. It's fantastic. And bear also has, like, in the fall, this, but I don't know how many of your listeners do, but bears have an extra resource that's outside of the meat and the hide. In the fall, they have this remarkable fat layer on them, and that is like liquid gold when it's rendered down. And it's so useful in so many aspects. And so I think you get even more of that. I don't hear people rendering down elk fat or deer fat. Bear fat is like gold. I mean, again, you go out East and that stuff is better than the meat. The fat.
Well,
and so it's a huge resource that's out there.
Yeah.
And people just look at it as like, and this doesn't help. I have a hide on my wall. It's like, does it mean that I didn't eat that bear? No, it just means I'm honoring the thing with the hide on my wall. But people see that and they're instantly like, he just shot that bear for that cool color and that hide.
Yeah. And on that note, it's hard to explain too, because I killed it for meat. I consume the meat. But kind of part about what I was getting back to, I like observing the animals. It is, to me, really cool to sit in my living room and look at my bear rug and just get to look at a bear. And if I want to go up and run my fingers through the bear fur, I can. To me, that's just special. And just like with any trophy, you remember the hunt. Like the mule deer behind me, that's my first mule deer buck. That's a hunt I'm never, ever, ever going to forget any single detail about it, right? But I just get to look at that and just be reminded and think about it. And it's not like I look like, oh, man, look at those antlers. Like the antlers is just the stimulus to the memory. The memory's not the antlers. The memory's the adventure, the time with my friends, all the things that took place before and after the kill, and then getting to share that with friends and family when I get home and cook for them and stuff like that. And it's the same thing with bears. And I don't know why people get off on bear meat. I mean, I understand some of the myths and the concerns that are out there. Even one of my close friends who's a longtime outfitter up here, I brought him some bear sausage one time. He's a huge cat hunter, and I was going to help him out with a couple of things one winter. So I went up to his cabin, and for his time, I was like, hey, man, I got some bear sausage I'd love to share with you, some good jalapeno cheddar smokies. And he just was like, I can't eat bear, man, these stinky, greasy, worm-filled animals. And I was like, dang, man, that really sucks. I was looking forward to it. I was like, too bad you won't just try it. And he did say, he's like, I'll keep it and I'll give it a consider. I'm like, well, let me know because I would like to eat my bear sausage if you don't want it. But
Yeah, that's
you know,
prize.
that dude's been up here hunting for his whole life, and I'm like, how do you develop that? Well, maybe it was one bad experience with an animal or something, but I've never had a bad bite of bear meat. It's absolutely amazing, and it's the
I've been
same thing
on
with
I've been on so many bears kills, and I've never found one with worms. And I'm not saying they don't have them. Like you go up in certain areas, it's going to be worse than others, I'm sure. But I hear that one a lot. The trichinosis thing, yeah, just cook it. The same with
Yep.
pork that you eat. It's no different than pork that you eat. You have to cook pork to a certain temperature. You don't eat raw pork. Don't eat raw bear meat. And so there's just a whole bunch of things. I think because it's a predator, it's not looked on as like premier table fare. And
Yep.
the same with mountain lion is fantastic.
It sure is.
Fantastic. And people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're going to eat that?" And I'm like, "Dude, this is some of the best meat you can get." And
Yeah,
so
man.
a big goal for us the last 3 or 4 years and moving into the future is kind of breaking down these barriers. If nothing else, to like just show people, like, change the narrative about bear hunting a little bit. Like, I don't like people just thinking all bear hunters are hide hunters, because we're not. And we're trying to really work on that with our messaging with the Bear Foundation, is like, hey, there's a bunch of us that really love the meat and do a lot of it with it. And it's not about just killing an animal. It's this whole experience that goes into it. And that's a challenge, because even in our own community, people don't buy into that.
Yeah. Yeah. When the couple bear hunt clients that I guided, I would always encourage them like, hey, I'll pack the meat out for you. You should keep this meat. And those that did they thought they were thanking me once they got home and ate it. They were like, I'm so glad you talked me into this. Those that didn't, I packed the meat out and I kept it, or I gave it to buddies. And I try to always utilize it. Same thing with lions. I kept every lion, that I could get my hands on, I'll keep.
Oh yeah.
For us,
for sure.
They're a big treat, man. If I can get a lion in the freezer, I mean, it makes the best chile verde, for example. I mean, that's a family
green
favorite.
chili, mountain lion green chili is so good.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite way to cook it. That's funny you say that. Yeah, I have a funny story about that. And I went grizzly hunting on the North Slope, where you were talking about earlier. And those bears on the North Slope, those grizz, they're kind of like an Arctic grizzly, we call them, but they're a grizzly bear. And they eat mostly roots. They're berries and roots, and they're not a ton of fisheries on there for them to eat fish. And so they're very similar to what a black bear would be like. And when I killed my grizz, I brought it all back to camp, packed it all back, and they went to fly it out a couple days later. And I was like, I'm going to cook that when I get back. We're going to eat some, because we were on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Like, we didn't have anything, like there's no trees or nothing to cook. And it's like, oh, we'll just cook it on the grill when we get back. When I got back, they're like, oh, we got rid of it. We don't eat them damn stinking things here. And I'm like, I wanted to eat it. Like, I was so excited, but it's like, that's just what they grew up doing. And so it's changing kind of perspectives for people. I bet that bear tasted no different than a black bear in the fall. It was eating a bunch of berries.
I've heard that from guys that have eaten grizz, is from interior grizzlies up in Alaska, and they'll say it tastes like a black bear. I mean,
I'm not going to tell you that one of those coastals probably tastes like fish. I mean, they definitely take on some of the flavor, and a black bear would be the same way, those coastals, But,
yep, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you hear people talk about it when it comes to like a Southeast Alaska, black bear. They say the earlier in the spring you could take that bear, the better, as far as quality of the meat. So, it's definitely something I would like to do if I can ever get my hands on an opportunity to go on a grizzly bear hunt, whether I end up getting to accomplish my dream of being an Alaska resident someday, or just finally I can afford it somehow.
Yeah,
I'd love to go up.
Well, it's not getting cheaper. Holy crap! I went.
Nope.
When I went, I mean, it was fiscally so irresponsible, but I put in for this tag, and I kind of had this like 5-year plan. I was going to save money, and it'd take me some time to draw that tag up there out of Prudhoe. And I drew it the first year and did not have the money, and took a loan out on my truck and said, screw it, you only live once. Like, I'm going grizzly bear hunting. It was a goal of mine to do it when I was 40, and I killed a grizz when I was 39. And I finally paid it off a few years later when I finished paying my truck off, So I was like, I just would rather die with experiences and memories than stuff. So that was one of them I had to do. And I'd love to
Amen.
go back, but man, it has gotten, because Alaska right now is the only game in town for Grizz.
Yep. Yep.
And so
Yeah.
prices have skyrocketed.
Yeah, it's expensive. I know I see the average probably in the $30,000 to $50,000 range,
Yeah,
depending
for
on
that coastal.
where you're at. A little less for the interiors, a lot more for the coastals, the peninsula bears. Obviously there's
Uh-huh.
Kodiak. I love that country that you were just talking about. I hunted caribou up there a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's how I kind
Actually
of
had a
figured it out.
yeah, I actually had a grizzly bear get into my meat cache because I had to leave part of my kill back up on the
Oh
mountain
yeah.
to do 2 trips out of camp to camp, and
Yep.
went back up that next morning, and Grizz had eaten about half a hindquarter, deboned all my ribs, and then the crows were starting to, or ravens starting to get on it. But
That North
and
Slope is covered in them.
it is, man, and I mean we were seeing tracks. We had one day if we had some fresh snow, and we grizz tracks everywhere, and saw
Yeah.
wolverines and that country up
Yeah.
there, man. I mean that's a whole podcast too, but that
It
North
gets in
Slope
you.
is
It is one of the most incredible places I've ever been. I've been hunting in Kyrgyzstan. I've been to Mongolia. Man, that North Slope is tough to beat. I don't know what it is. I'm not done going back there. I'll be back there for something another time because I just love it so much.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm trying to eyeball maybe in a year or two, year and a half, 2 years, trying to get up there. Might have to push it out just because it's hard. If you're going to do a fly in, you're looking almost 3 to 4 years out now for booking time on planes. But
Uh-huh.
there's opportunities to hunt, especially as I have a few buddies up there that I could get on river float trips for moose and
Oh,
stuff.
there you
But
go.
man, I just want to go back up and hunt some more caribou and just experience that North
Yep.
Slope country. So
So
yeah,
neat.
man, it's pretty special. I think we covered a lot of the stuff I was going to ask you. Obviously, I was going to ask you where are bears doing well. I think the
Oh
answer for
yeah.
black bears seems to be most everywhere. Are there any
Everywhere.
places where we're
Yeah.
worried about black bear populations right now?
I wouldn't say worried. They're not really a resource concern, and that's probably why they get less money put to them because they're not. I think I'm more worried about our black bears becoming, I don't want to say this, like public enemy number one. The public perception of black bears in some areas is not very good
Right.
because we're not managing them accordingly. Like I look at Colorado, there's places in southern Colorado, Durango and some of that where they're managing the bears so poorly. There's only a fall season in Colorado, which is a shame. They have so many bears. And what ends up happening, we got a people problem, not a bear problem. And so
Mhm.
these bears are just living in these towns. And, it's a sad life for a bear to be dependent on garbage and then get put down by a state official. Like who wants to see that? I don't. I want them to be on the hillside doing their thing. And so I don't think population wise, we have some issues in Virginia right now. It's a significant issue. Sarcoptic mange ran through that population in Virginia, and it really did some damage down there. And Virginia kind of was doing its thing and had some bears, and then the bears started cranking and thriving. And I don't think it's a small space that they live in. I think they're just on top of each other, and one bear or two bears got it, and it spread so dang fast, and it really wiped them out. And that's a big issue in some of our eastern populations, the potential for that mange to decimate the numbers, and it did real significant damage in Virginia. The Virginia Tech is studying it now, and it's honestly it's the work being done is almost a day late and a dollar short. I think we're going to understand it more for the future, but what's done is done. And so you got places like California and Washington that are just, I mean, you talk about a bear hunter's paradise. Those are places you want to go, and California is probably not on a lot of people's list. It's on mine, top 5. But man, they got a lot of bears and they're doing well, and in the West as well. And like I'd mentioned, Florida, Louisiana, we'd have bear hunts now. They're doing a bunch of bear research in Texas right now, which is really neat. So yeah, it's an exciting time if you're a fan of bears.
Yeah. That whole California thing is interesting because we were talking about it a little bit ago before the show, just about how they were trying to get rid of their bear population or bear hunting rather. That got shut down, thankfully. I mean, a lot of hunting advocacy groups really got in there and got that shut down before it really gained traction in their legislature. But now there's pushes for expanding hunting opportunities on bears, and I don't know what all will come in that state what's really going to happen as far as expanding opportunities. But I think that there might be some hope on some of that, at least pursuit for dogs there. I think was something that was on the table that won't be pursue and kill, but even if it's catch and release, I mean, that's a step in the right direction.
And people don't realize, but California was a huge hound state. I mean, we were hunting a lot of bears with hounds there, and then they got rid of it. You haven't been able to hunt lions there forever. And so we got a lot of bears. It's an interesting detail in California is they kill about the same amount of bears every year, and the population just keeps going up, but we're only harvesting the same amount. It's because a lot of people aren't like, priority number one isn't bears for them. And so they're just like, I don't really care. And so what the hope was is to try and give some more opportunity for harvest to those that are out there harvesting bears. You know, it's like the same 10% of the dudes are killing the bears every year. And a second tag had come up and some pursuit stuff and maybe a spring season. And so they just did their management plan recently, and hunting was a big component of their management plan. Like, it was called out many times, and that was neat to see for California. So I think it's finding the right mix of like palatable, like they definitely manage wildlife in some of our states for public perception, and hunting is not high on the public's radar in a lot of states. And so they're trying to manage like backlash from the citizens that don't like hunting, and then trying to create this like, hey, we need to kill a few more bears. We have more bears than anywhere in the lower 48. We're having problems. And how do we do that? And so I think we're going to get somewhere with it. I really hope. We have a chapter in California that works really hard on that all the time. And man, I'd love to see a spring season down there, or a 2-bear deal, maybe a spring tag and a fall tag. I think it'd be a really, really neat thing. And you are not going to put a dent in it. They got 60 to 80,000 bears in that state.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, and it's funny because California is not on a lot of people's hunting list, but it is also on mine specifically for bear hunting. I wouldn't mind going to try to blacktail hunt, but my biggest problem with hunting any blacktails is in California specifically is, having grown up there, I'm well aware of poison oak and my reaction to it. It's one of the things that keeps me from hunting turkeys down there too, is I just don't feel like dealing with poison oak in any way, shape, or form. It put me in the hospital when I was in high school. I hate that stuff. Yeah. But you get up in the Sierras, and then that's a completely not a problem. You get on the east side, you get into the best bear hunting habitat, and it's like places I want to hunt bears, which is in the mountains. You don't have to worry about that at all. I would love to go hunt bears. I have a buddy that I actually went to the Sheriff's Academy with when I started in California, and he now owns and operates a guide service up there called Gray Light Guide Service, and he does fishing, waterfowl, but he takes smoker bears, smoker mule deer.
Bears.
Yeah. They take really nice deer and really nice bears.
Almost all color phase too.
Yeah, so I would go there. It's actually not horribly expensive to get a bear tag there if you consider an out west non-resident hunting experience. And that's what I always try to tell people, especially when it comes to, whether it comes to outfitting or people just asking me about, I want to come out and DIY hunt in the West. I tell them, if you want that big game experience, come out west and chase a bear. I mean, you can get the cheap, the tags are usually
everywhere,
over the counter, inexpensive, very liberal seasons, and you can get out there and really have a true backcountry, big Western Rocky Mountain hunt for a bear. And I don't think you're going to leave that being like, well, I wish that was an elk. I think you're going to be leaving it like, I'm a bear hunter. So
yes. Yeah. And you get the opportunity in several of our states to hunt in the spring. So that opens up a whole nother time for you. Like, I'm going to be doing this in the fall, but I don't have anything in the spring. Well, come out west. You can spring bear hunt in several states. Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, they have a spring season. You can draw an Oregon spring tag. So there's a lot of opportunity to hunt. In a different time of year when everyone else is kind of like wishing it was hunting season, you can be out hunting.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I've actually not yet hunted bears in the fall. All of my bear hunting's been in the spring. I kind of want to remedy that this coming year, because I'm going to miss out on bear hunting this spring for a back surgery that I'm having next month. So I'm going to, come the fall, I'll have been 2 years without being able to bear hunt. So probably actually going to I'm looking at putting off elk hunting to try to get a fall bear next
Get
year, earlier in the
a bunch of
late
bear
summer,
fat.
early fall.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, bear hunting's spectacular. I spend, when I'm not injured, my spring is turkeys and bears nonstop. It's hard to balance because I'm a nerd and weird, and one of my buddies got me into it, but we like to hunt turkeys a lot. So
Okay.
I
I
always
can't
have to
get that.
balance that. I know, man. A lot of people can't. But I usually tell folks, I almost guarantee you, if you came and hunted turkeys with me, you change your mind and want to hunt turkeys. So, but I'm balanced back and forth. I usually make some good time for and I have to tell my buddy who's not interested in bears because he cares about turkeys. I'm like, all right, dude, I got to go on my bear hunt. I'll come back and hunt more turkeys with you later. But,
Yeah.
yeah,
To be continued.
but yeah, spring, man, it's a great time to get out here and hunt. And
It's the best time to be
Yeah.
out in the hills. It's my favorite.
And I mean, you do in the Idaho Panhandle, like especially up in our Unit 1, you're going to see other bear hunters come.
Oh, yeah.
Starting about the second week of May, you're going to run into other bear hunters, but it's a lot less bear hunters that you're going to run into than there are elk and deer hunters in the fall. Really
It's
cool
still
way
bear
to.
hunting in general is still such a low participant hobby. It's like, Wyoming, I think last year I heard a stat, Wyoming sold 70,000 elk tags. And I think this last year we sold 500 bear tags.
Yeah, that's wild.
Or maybe 2,000 or 3,000 bear tags
Right.
and 500 harvest, something like that. But I mean, that's pretty common everywhere. I think it's just a low, which is good. It's a hard thing to promote bear hunting and then go out there and be mad when people are bear hunting because you see
Yep.
more people doing it. But I think our goal is to create more advocates for the species and for bear
Right.
hunting, because without that, it's the same thing that's happening to trapping. We're low hanging fruit, and it's going to be trapping and predator hunting that goes. And so our mission is to really just build that army, and you got to recruit and retain. You got to get new bear hunters and retain them as bear hunters. Then you create that hunter advocate. And so, yeah, it's a hard thing. There's that whole meat eater fight, the two brothers.
Yep.
The one brother says hunt quietly, and the other one's promoting hunting. And it's like, I get the dynamic of that because, I don't want to see people hunting in my favorite spots, but I'm also on, really trying to push bear hunting as an awesome experience. And so, but at the end of the day, it just will never be like deer and elk hunting.
No. And, my 2 cents on the R3 thing, the recruit, retain, and all that stuff, right? I understand too. Obviously, I get a little bit more towards I was relatively recently recruited into hunting.
Yeah.
On my own accord. And then, of course, though, here we are this many years later. And if somebody's at a spot before I get there, I'm like, oh man, there's more hunters than ever out here.
Yeah.
It didn't take long before I fell into the same trap. That being said, man, my 2 cents on it, for whatever it's worth to the world, is that, one, I agree with Stephen Ranella over Mount Ranella regarding we need more hunters because we need more advocates, and we need more advocates because we want to keep the sport alive. If no one wants to talk about hunting, or we want to recruit less hunters, and we don't really have higher hunter numbers,
No.
what it comes down to is the second part of that is we need more space. We need to protect our public lands. We need to gain more access. We need to open up more public lands. We need to open up public lands that are close to hunting that can be. We need room to spread out. The reason, there's a spot right by my house, and this isn't really a public lands issue, but we have a lot of private land around my place that is access, yes. So they've made an agreement with the state that hunters can access and hunt on the ground. Well, thousands of acres of it closed a couple of years ago. So people that are hunting kind of here close to town, they're getting on us like, well, I can't hunt there anymore. Well, I guess I'll go over here. So now we've just taken a whole bunch of hunters and consolidated them to my trailhead.
It displaces people, and that's what's happening more than anything.
So how can you be mad at a fella who lost his hunting spot to that? Now he's got to come over and try to find a new spot. You can't be mad at him. I would do the same thing and have done the same thing. And then the other part of that is we can make excuses all day about why we're not getting animals, seeing animals. There's more hunters. There's the wolves, the grizzly bears, the blue tongue, and this and that, all the things that can affect populations and experiences. At the end of the day, there are still excuses. There's still hunting to be done. I live in North Idaho and I harvest animals. I figured out sometimes you walk further. Sometimes you learn how to find spots that are just being overlooked. You just get creative, but you go out there, you hunt, and just have fun. And when you work with your other hunters, that's another thing too, is you see somebody walking down the trailhead, go talk to the guy rather than be mad about it. A lot of times you end up making good friends that way.
Oh, it's true. And I'll never complain too much because I can be out my back door in 20 minutes and be bear hunting and not see a soul. And, same with the elk and deer. It's just, I think people get focused on the wrong thing, and maybe, there is more people using the areas you used to use, but there's probably some areas that are being overlooked, like you said. And, hey, man, we're all doing the same thing. We're all hunting and we're all hunters and we're all sportsmen. And the infighting is not going to get us anywhere. No. That's for damn sure.
No, and that's one of the things that I think important too with advocacy groups, man, is that the social media monster is such a problem, but it's a necessary evil for anybody trying to advocate or run a business anymore. But, the first thing you see when a policy comes out, whether it's a policy from a Democrat administration or a Republican administration. Right now, we have the Republican administration. Man, you look at the comments on those Instagram posts from some of the bigger organizations or influencers, and, well, this is what you voted for, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, man, slow your roll. First off, I agree with you. This could be a problem. Yes. The other thing is, like, you vote the other way, this might not be a problem, but then there's going to be a whole nother set of problems. Like, we're going to have problems no matter what. We got to stick together so that from whatever side the problems come from, we are united and can go up and call our senators and do the things. And when we do it right, we actually gain traction. We just seen that with the public, with Mike Lee, which blows my mind because he keeps trying.
That was
the whole Mike
bipartisan.
Lee. Yeah, the whole Mike Lee sell-off thing, that we shut that down. We, as in the hunting community, united, dropped our political preferences, and got it done. And and that fight's not over.
I just saw it. He's doing it again.
Yeah, and we have one of our, I believe, senator, I hope I'm not wrong, but state senator here in Idaho, Russ Fulcher. He just went on a big thing about how Idaho should control all the federal lands because we'd manage it better. We could get into that, but the end of that is not only would we be broke, we can't manage it better. We don't have the infrastructure, the personnel. We'd ruin it very quickly because we couldn't staff it, fund it. Yeah, they're going to sell it for timber, for development, and then we're not going to have public lands. We're going to be Texas. So, no disrespect, Texas. Love you guys, but I want to have my public lands. So
I do too, man. We're blessed to be able to just go where we want.
Yeah, man. Well, so if people want to learn more or get involved with the American Bear Foundation, what's the best way to contact you, contact the foundation, and to get involved?
Our website is AmericanBearFoundation.org. All the contact info is on there, like my number's on there. You can reach out to me. We have chapters in several states. We're working on more chapters. And so there will be chapter contacts as well. Social media, American Bear Foundation on Instagram and Facebook. Not great at social media. We're an all-volunteer organization, so no paid staff. So we don't have a social media manager. We just kind of we're muddling through it. We've been doing it a long time, but our goal's always been to put the money that we raise for memberships or raffles or whatever we do back onto the ground. And that's been a goal of ours. So, we don't have all the fluff and cool videos that a lot of people do, but anytime you want to kind of stay up to date with what we're doing. And then I always tell people the best way to always know what's going on with bears is to sign up, be a member, because then we have your email, and then like any calls to action for your state, your region, if you have a chapter in that state, like we can keep you up to date on things that are happening for bears, and you can become kind of one of the members of the bear hunting army that are out there protecting our right to bear hunt.
I love it, man. So I'm looking here at your website, and I found the membership. You got, let's see here. How much is your general membership fees?
$35, and you get a year subscription to Bear Hunting Magazine. And then we have a life membership for $1,000. You get a Stone Glacier pack with that and a jacket. And you also get the magazine. Those things help us out. Like I said, we do a banquet every year in Cody, Wyoming, kind of our national banquet, so to speak. And that's coming up in March. And then right now we have a huge raffle going on. We're giving away a brown bear hunt in coastal Alaska, giving away the brown bear hunt and $5,000 for expenses, a Stone Glacier pack, and some taxidermy as well. It's a winner take all. You get to go up in 2027 and hunt coastal brown bear, $100 in entry. So pretty cheap chance at doing it. like we said, it's going to probably be out of everyone's wheelhouse one day for money, unless you're a millionaire. $100 chance. So that's on our website as well. That kind of will fund us for the year next year. So hoping to sell as many of those as we can.
That's awesome. I think that's great, man. Yeah. Well, I'm going to be keeping an eye on you guys. I think you and I should definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, for sure, buddy.
I'm going to finish up my membership application. Just should have done that before I was on the podcast with you, but you motivated me. I'm a believer of I'm an avid bear hunter. Love them. Love what you're doing. I'm going to be looking for the Idaho chapter that you said was on its way, hopefully here soon. That's good stuff, man. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And I love it. I'm exceptionally motivated about what you're doing. So,
well, thank you.
Before I get up out of my desk, I will be a paid member of the American Bear Foundation myself. So you talked me into it. I want to do it now before I forget.
I'm always here if you need anything at all, man. You got my number. Hit me up. If you're ever out this way, I would love to visit with you and get together. And if I'm up in that part of the world, I'll give you a shout for sure.
Yeah, that would definitely be fantastic, man. The invite's open this direction too. Yeah, man. Well, thank you for your time, and for everybody out there listening tonight. Just a reminder, please give us a like, follow, subscribe, comment, all those things that you hear podcasters say to do. It does help. I don't do this show for money. It's free. I actually pay to do it. Which is, unfortunately I have to pay people to talk to me, right? Or pay for people to talk to me. But no, seriously, folks, just give me a hand by subscribing, doing all that stuff when you get an opportunity, and just keep up with social media, because we got some updates about the drift boat project for Protectors Peak. We got a lot going on. So 2026 is going to be an even better year as we continue to progress with the show and some other things. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks again, and if this resonates with you, I want to welcome you to the tribe and encourage you to share this podcast with your friends. Hit subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Outdoors. And if you or someone you know has a great story about life or the wilderness, I want to share it. You can shoot me a message on Instagram or email me with all inquiries and questions at thomas@pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com. That's Thomas, THOMAS, at pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com. Until next time, get out there, get after it, and pursue freedom in the outdoors. Before we get started, I want to thank our first partner, Response Ready Medical. Response Ready Medical, bringing our customers the best quality training and equipment for the worst case scenario. Response Ready Medical's vision is to be the leading provider of emergency preparedness solutions across the United States, empowering communities, organizations, and individuals to respond confidently and preserve life during critical moments. Offering same-day certification, all Response Ready Medical classes are instructed by nationally registered and state-licensed firefighter, paramedics, law enforcement officers, and hospital staff. Classes currently being offered by Response Ready Medical include CPR and AED, CPR, AED, and first aid, emergency trauma care, child and babysitting safety, CABS, backcountry medicine, and wilderness first aid. Your premium partner in emergency preparedness, Response Ready Medical.